Hi, my name is Rick, and I hope you'll join me and my wife for a Canadian Rockies vacation in June. My wife and I flew to Seattle and, as we descended onto the runway, the staff announced that this was the pilot's last flight before his retirement and there would be a delay getting to the gate. We weren't on Emirates Airline, but the delay was the pilot receiving a water cannon salute like this to celebrate his retirement. The next stop in our journey was a short hop to Vancouver. We arrived a day early for the tour and, although it was overcast, we had a great view of the mountains across the harbor itself, and especially the Vancouver Convention Center with its mowable roof. Day 1. The kickoff dinner for the tour wasn't until 6 p.m., so we spent most of the day in the Granville Market on Granville Island. Before we even got to the market, we saw the fun paint jobs on these silos. Both the island and the market have an eclectic bohemian atmosphere. Some of the food displays look disgusting to us. It seems like there were hundreds of stalls selling all types of food from every nation. Vancouver is truly an international city. There was lots of fresh produce, and it was arranged beautifully. We could recognize the cherries and berries, but there were several foods we'd never seen before. The bakery items looked so inviting. Who wouldn't want a bite of this colorful cake? The shops sold all sorts of services and goods. Visitors can stop in and buy an hour of time on exercise equipment or tchotchkes of every description. Day 2. Our first day of touring took us to several places around Vancouver. First stop, the Bill Reid Gallery of Northwest Coast Art. The gallery features art made by or celebrating Canada's Indigenous people. Indigenous people are the groups who are the earliest known inhabitants of an area. Canadians celebrate their country's Indigenous people's heritage and culture. You can see that this bronze is a huge sculpture. I guess the title, Killer Whale, says it all. Christchurch Cathedral was next to the museum. Have you ever seen a bell tower as colorful as this one? The signs continue with the bold, colorful theme. We were off to Stanley Park. It was cloudy and very rainy, so the pictures aren't as good as I hoped. This is a view of downtown Vancouver. You get a better view of the convention center and its grass roof. Does it look like it needs mowing? This garden of totem poles is near the visitor center, gift shop, and coffee bar. Cross through a wooded area and you can see North Vancouver and its busy commercial port, the port where the real work is done. You can see Brockton Point Lighthouse from here. We drove to Prospect Point Lookout on the northwest corner of the park, where we had a hazy view of North Vancouver. Granville Island was the next stop. Since we had already explored it the day before, we went to a good restaurant for a relaxing lunch. It was a very full day. After lunch, we rode the bus over to catch the ferry, which took us from A to B, across the Strait of Georgia. We continued to Victoria City on Vancouver Island. Oh yes, it's confusing. The city of Vancouver is not on Vancouver Island, and although Victoria City is just a fraction of the size of Vancouver, it's the capital of British Columbia. Our hotel room had a great view of Victoria City's harbor and downtown. Day 3. The must-see destination for anyone visiting the area is Butchart Gardens. The gardens are 55 acres of plants, streams, fountains, and other attractions. There are 5 distinct gardens inside: sunken, rose, Japanese, Italian, and Mediterranean. These animals aren't in any garden. They are in a dell next to the sunken garden and are made of living plant materials like moss and lichen. Interestingly, the dragon fountain, which certainly has an Asian influence, isn't in the Japanese garden. These dancing fountains are not in any special garden either. They slowly change from one design to another. My photos seem to be mostly outside of the 5 gardens. That's because the photos from ground level can't highlight the designs that make each garden unique. The brisk wind has this kinetic sculpture spinning fast. The sunken garden contains this lily pad pond. You can see that the dove sculpture marks an important historical location in the Bouchard. Nothing more to say than, what a beautiful rhododendron blossom. Watch out! He may be made of plants, but this mountain lion still looks pretty dangerous. Several rows of pretty flowers are here to brighten your day. The sunken garden is the centerpiece of Bouchard Gardens. Each tree in this line has its own flowering skirt. After Bouchard Gardens, we made a little trip to Beacon Hill Park. It marks the western end of the Trans-Canada Highway that runs from coast to coast. This cargo ship is leaving the commercial port of Victoria City. The weather is getting worse this afternoon, bad for photography but great for flying kites. This is a close-up of some of the kites. Day 4. We were on our own in the morning, so a couple of us went down to the harbor to watch the water taxi ballet. There were no pirouettes, but the precision driving, or should that be sailing, was impressive. As they charged the pier, I wasn't sure the taxis would stop in time, but there was no need to worry. The plan was to take float planes back to Vancouver. This is the type of plane that we used. Here's a look out the window as we taxied to the runway. There was no physical runway, just an area in the water set aside for takeoffs and landings. Say goodbye to Victoria City and Vancouver Island. Say hello to Vancouver and the mainland. Once back in Vancouver, our guide took us to the lively area of Gastown. It's known for its whistling steam clock, a mix of souvenir shops, indie art galleries, and a trendy restaurant scene. We made a short visit to the steam clock. This view is a close-up of the inner workings. Here comes a short movie. You can watch and hear the steam clock mark the hour in the next movie. Our guide took the entire group to dinner. We're looking at the railroad freight yard. Soon we will be going to the passenger station and board the Rocky Mountaineer to ride the rails from Vancouver to Jasper Park. Day 5. There were no pictures from last night due to the low light, but there were plenty of opportunities this morning. Most of the time it was gorgeous, but nameless, scenery passing by. We were on a siding to yield the right-of-way to a freight train. even stopped. The scenery was still beautiful. This hillside is an unusual shade of green due to the angle of the sun. The guide gave us advance notice so we could get good photos of Pyramid Creek Falls. A domed observation car is a good location to get great photos. That's a rock, not a mountain. We're on the platform at Jasper. The train is so long that I can't see the engine. I can see the last car of the train, but it is way down the track. This map shows the rest of the tour. Once we checked in at the Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge, there was a catered barbecue lunch and the afternoon was on our own. Unfortunately, one of the passengers started the tour with a cold and the rest of us were catching it by this time, so we just checked out the lodge and rested. Day 6. We're on our own for the day, but didn't feel like going to any of the more demanding activities available from the concierge. The most beautiful lake we'd ever seen was right in front of the lodge, so we went exploring. This little pier was just around the bend from the lodge. The lodge looks picture perfect in this photo from a spot close to the pier. Look at the lake's far shoreline. Do you see the white canoe? It looks tiny in the photo, but it holds about 14 people. The view of the lake is awesome thanks, in part, to all the mountains like this that watch over it. This multi-family lodge sits in a perfect location. Go farther away from the lodge, make a right turn, and the lodge is out of sight. That isn't a little boat in the middle of the water, but a nesting place for geese. Day 7. We're leaving beautiful Jasper and heading south to Lake Louise. There are several stops along the way, and the first one is Maline Canyon. This photo and the next two are taken looking upstream with the water coming towards us and falling over the rocky edge. Each is taken from a different place or at a different angle. This photo shows the power of the falls. A low point of view always makes a more dramatic photo. I promise this rainbow is not photoshopped. The photo was taken looking in the opposite direction from the first three. It also shows several lookouts for the falls. We are headed down the Icefields Parkway towards Athabasca Glacier. The tops of several mountains had this configuration. The full name escapes me, but it has the word castle in it. That's because what looks like a castle with turrets is on top, protecting the mountain. Can you tell how deep the snow is on this mountain? Here's a close-up for a better look. The guide estimated this as 40 feet deep. Can you believe there's still this much snow in June? We've arrived at Athabasca Glacier. This was taken from the porch of the visitor center. The glacier has been shrinking for years. It is now shrinking 15 feet each year. The Ice Explorer is the way people who aren't mountain climbers get onto the glacier. Once it is loaded, it's driven over a cliff that feels like the angle of a roller coaster, and then onto an area where you can stand, walk around, and examine the details of the glacial surface. Continuing on our way down the Icefields Parkway, we stopped for lunch at a diner near Waterfowl Lakes. A scenic lookout is always a good place to stop for some good views. A person could almost get numb to the scenery along Icefields Parkway. Almost. We made it to Lake Louise. We had time to look around before dinner and take a few photos. This is Saddle Mountain. The view out our hotel window includes Saddle Mountain, which is almost out of view on the left. Straight down the lake is Victoria Glacier on Victoria Mountain. Day 8. We spent the night at the Fairmont Chateau, Lake Louise. The hotel offers a service for an early call so that the guests can see the sunrise light up Victoria Mountain and color the snow. Cloudy weather was predicted, so we skipped the call. Imagine my surprise when I woke up early and saw this. The sun was coming in under the clouds, and the mountain was definitely pinked. Do you notice the little spot of snow remaining on the mountain to the right side of the picture? A telephoto lens and a different angle reveal that it's actually a giant giraffe. There's a path around the right side of the lake, so my wife and I decided to take a walk. The boathouse on the opposite shore added a splash of color to the scene. There weren't many boats out, but it's only June 8th in the Canadian Rockies, so it might be a little early for their vacation season. There's no saddle on Saddle Mountain from this angle. A few hardy canoers actually were out that morning after all. We're at the end of the trail and the overcast weather made our hotel look dull. On our way to Banff, we stopped off at Moraine Lake. The visitor center and convenience store blend into the landscape better than most. The lake was a spectacular teal color. I don't know if it's always this color or if it was just the weather, but it certainly was beautiful. Several of the lakes that we saw had teal tint, but Moraine Lake had the strongest color. It was raining steadily at this time. I don't know why I looked up at the mountain at just the right time. Maybe there was a noise. The people on this overlook with me looked up just in time to see a small avalanche. You can see the end of the avalanche in the center of this picture. Take a closer look in this view. A small group of bighorn sheep watched as we passed by on our way to Siding 29. What the heck is Siding 29? When the Canadian Pacific Railway was built in the 1880s, a little town grew up near a spot where the railroad was cutting a tunnel, and the town was referred to as Siding 29. Once the tunnel was finished, the town moved 3 miles away and was renamed Banff. This is the classic photo of the Fairmont Banff Springs, our home for the next 2 days. The Bow River runs through the center of Banff and can be seen at the bottom of this photo. It was taken from the hotel's dining room. It was still stormy and raining, but that only makes the scene more powerful. Day 9. We were scheduled to take a rafting trip on the Bow River. The river was swollen and angry from the rains the day before, so we were glad the trip was canceled. We took a bus tour around the city instead. We were on our own for the rest of the day, but we didn't do anything strenuous. This photo from the dining room was taken a little after lunch. No, that's not my finger at the top, it's fog on the mountains. We did walk to the tourist area of downtown to look around. This is the second time you've seen a photo out this window. With the sun out, blue skies, and cotton ball clouds, it's the better one, don't you think? Day 10. We were at the Calgary airport by 10 a.m. and the tour has ended. By this time, we were really under the weather with our colds, so we didn't do anything today. We did manage to get out to a nice restaurant since it was our 45th anniversary. Happy anniversary to us. Day 11. We planned to tour the city of Calgary in the morning, but we were tired and only visited the Calgary Tower. We rode to the top and took some photos. These two versions of the same scene are very different. One is what you'd expect, and the other comes from a creative setting on my camera. It's very colorful, isn't it? Look down from the tower and you can see that some of the Calgary businesses put their names and logos on their roofs. One of our favorite TV shows to stream on TV is Heartland, a good family drama. It's filmed about 60 miles south of Calgary in two towns that are about 10 miles apart. When we got to the first town, there were no signs to promote any tourism about the show, even there are 13 seasons. All the mountains, woods, and forests from the show were nowhere to be found. I thought they all must be computerized movie magic. The town was a disappointment. The second town began the same way, but ended up great. We drove around town for a while and saw nothing. As we turned a corner to head for the interstate and return to Calgary, there was Maggie's Feed Store and Diner. We parked and walked over to look inside and read the signs on the window. One informed us that this is only used for exterior shots. You can see that it's very small. Maggie's side view isn't much larger. The set is a wedge. The photos show the only two sides. The third side is the building Maggie's is built against. Another sign directed us to a museum around the corner. That's where the saddle, the diner diorama, and other items from the show were displayed. As we drove out of town, all the scenery from the show was right there. It was a great afternoon. When we planned this trip, we knew we had another trip we wanted to take that also involved Vancouver. We decided to save the cost of a second trip from home to Vancouver by doubling up and taking one trip after the other. That's why we added a Princess Alaska cruise tour to our ship. See you in Fairbanks.